Hey everybody, today I'm going to go through two different Rolex 1655 homages. The 1655 was the original Rolex Explorer 2, and it looked quite like this. This one's by Steinhart, or Steinhart. It is the Ocean 1 39, as in the size, GMT, but I think they call it the Vintage. Yeah, it's the Ocean 39 Vintage GMT. This is the model of this watch. The other homage, really cool, kind of, is a Seiko of all things. We'll open up that in a second, but it's a Seiko homage to the same exact watch. So first things first, if you haven't heard of the Explorer 2, it's Rolex's spelunking watch, or caver watch, originally, at least. It looked pretty much exactly like this. There's been plenty of homages over the year. I think this is one of the best ones out there. I wanted to comment, I don't have a lot of homage watches. Generally, that's not my thing. There's so many awesome watches out there made by really impressive watchmakers, small and big alike, that I feel like every time you buy a watch that's just a cheaper version of a better watch, I feel like you're doing the industry a disservice. However, I think there's a time when homage watches do make sense. And that's if the watch is clearly not trying to pretend it's something it's not, right? We see the correct logo here. It's a Steinhart, and it says that very clearly. A lot of people on YouTube, myself included, there's certain words I won't say because the video won't just get viewed. But some watches, they're not really homage watches. They are, how to say, like when you put your feet up on a counter, if you know what I'm saying. They are feet counter, sort of. Say that backwards. Yeah, those kind of watches are not good for anybody. They're not good for you. They're not good for the industry, even if you're very well aware of what you're buying. And money's going to the wrong place, and money's not going to great companies that are doing novel things. However, if the watch is very clearly labeled who really does make it, and it's a watch that just hasn't been made, it's not being made anymore, and it hasn't been made for a while, and the watch has some improvements, then it really is an homage. That means to celebrate something. That means to pay tribute to something. The original Rolex 1655 was a really interesting watch, and I'll get to it. But they haven't made that since 1985. And when you do find a used copy, it's kind of a lot of money. They're like $30,000. And I think this watch has some improvements. So first things first, that 1655 Rolex came out in 1970, 71. And it, like this watch, has 4 hands. But it wasn't a collar GMT nor a flyer GMT. That 4th hand was locked to the hour position. So you couldn't move them independently. Whatever time it showed on the smaller hour, it showed on the bigger one as well. Just the 24-hour version of it. And it was made for spelunkers or cavers. Here on the surface, I generally know if it's day or not. But people go caving for days at a time, and you really can lose track. So it's helpful to basically have an AM/PM indicator, which is what this 24-hour dial does. Hand, rather. And I think that's kind of interesting. Rolex has always been big on marketing, and they try to find these segments of, let's say, typically manly behaviors, diving. And even if you're not a diver, but you're diver adjacent, you go to the beach a lot, or you're a boater, you're like, yeah, let me get one of those dive watches. Caving is this kind of like traditional masculine activity in some ways, right? Just like mountaineering with the Explorer. Oh, that's another homage watch, kind of. One of my few. I don't have a Rolex Explorer nor any Rolex at the moment. But I do have this really awesome homage to the original Rolex Explorer. That's a beautiful Smith's watch. But let me put this one on. So cavers, Rolex had their Explorer, which is their mountaineering watch. And the Explorer 2 was, rather than climbing up mountains, was going deep underground, which basically had a 24-hour indicator on it. And cavers do go diving, or do go underwater, so you want some water resistance as well. The original Rolex 1655 had 100 meters of water resistance. This Steinhart has 300 meters, so it is quite a step up, at least in that regard. I think it's really, really attractive. The Ocean one that you can get normally, like directly from Steinhart, that's a 42 millimeter watch. This is a more limited edition. It's 39, just like the original watch. This is a 39 millimeter dimension here. This is 47, I think, and that's 13. That's spot on, same dimensions as the original Rolex, which I think is really cool. This is a partnership with Gromon watches, or Gromon watches. I don't know how to pronounce. And you have to go through them to get this. They use this aged radium lume, old radium lume, and normally I'm not the biggest fan of the fake lume, the fake aged lume, but I think it works really, really well in this. I just think that looks awesome. It does not have a date magnifier, which the original Rolex would have. There's another company that Steinhart works with, Ulco, and they make a version that does have a date window, but it doesn't have the aged lume. So you pick the one that you like the most there. This has a Sellita SW330-2 movement. And so on this watch, unlike the original Rolex, it's, I don't know, up or down, which one does date? Okay, down is date, but up lets me move the hour hand separately. So this would be a collar GMT. Again, the original Rolex was not a collar, nor was it a traveler. Those two hands were locked. Later versions of the Explorer 2 introduced this functionality, but that first watch, that 1655, was not. Apparently, the 1655 Rolex wasn't a big seller, even though they sold it for 15 years. Don't really understand that. I don't think that would happen today. 1970 or 71 to like 74 or something. I'm reading different dates online. And it seems like the number one reason is because the dial is a little cluttered and confusing. And the thing is, that's what I love about this watch. They made a dial that was purpose-driven. This is for caving. You can see the main hour markers are on the tracks, but between them there's a separate... Yeah, I'm zoomed in. That's the main hour marker here. And between them, you have these markers here for the 24 hours. And of course, that corresponds with this fixed bezel. I think it's a really nice looking style. One of the things that so many watches just have a diver inspired dial, whether they're a diver or not. And I do admire how this looked like this. However, apparently that impacted sales because that was hard to read. And having owned this for a while, I tend to agree. The readability on this watch is definitely compromised. Under these bright lights, every smudge appears, but I think mine's still in great condition. Unlike the original Rolex, the case back is this etching. Rolex has their special kind of case back, that like star, that requires that special tool to remove. Unlike the original Rolex, this is solid end links, milled clasps. So we have some modern improvements. Other than that, the 300 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal. And the movement, the SW330, is a 4 hertz movement, unlike the Rolex, which was a 2.75 hertz. That Rolex movement was very impressive for its time, and still is in a way. Very accurate, COSC certified kind of accuracy. The watch that comes in this is the Elaborate grade. I believe that's also similarly accurate, but it definitely has a better power reserve. It's like 56 hours on this watch. The original Rolex would have had 44. And that's kind of what I admire about it. Here's an homage watch of a Rolex of all things. I mean, would I rather have the Rolex? Probably, given the pedigree. But hey, this at a fraction of the price, modern materials, modern power reserve, higher beat, and hey, it's an actual GMT. I can adjust that 24-hour hand. some people for a long time called this the Steve McQueen. Well, people still do, thinking that Steve McQueen wore one. I'm gonna put this back on, but apparently he did not. Like he was just involved with marketing or said that he liked it. Another nickname, a French nickname, was the Fréchillon, which means big arrow, which I believe was referring to that guy right there. Either way, I just think the color of this black dial on steel with orange and white just looks killer. One of my favorite watches today is still the Explorer 2. It's a 42 millimeter watch nowadays. It has a diver inspired dial, unlike this, but it's probably more readable. And I also like the Black Bay Pro, which is similar. And I would like to maybe pick one of them up. But yeah, on the whole, if you do like that original Rolex and you're looking to get an homage or something that genuinely pays tribute to it, this is a fantastic, fantastic watch. I did want to close out with, okay, we're over 10 minutes, so this will be very quick because I spent most of the time explaining that Rolex. Let me back up here. This is a Seiko, of all things, and it's also an homage to a Rolex, which doesn't happen often. Seiko in Japan, this is a JDM watch, partners with Nano Universe, which is like a clothing brand, like a streetwear brand. And they've made a handful of watches, actually. Let's get a look at that. They've partnered on a bunch, like, it's a silly actions to assemble all the products and knowledge a sapiens needed to live in the whole universe. I have a feeling that is that's either intentionally trying to be silly or it's not a native English speaker. Yeah, it's like a book that goes on your shelf. Is this the Nano Universe logo? Oh yeah, so Nano Universe also did an homage of the Daytona, or their take on the Daytona. But here you go. This is a Seiko. Seiko doesn't do a lot of, all the big watch companies, they don't often do clear and obvious reinterpretations of Rolexes. That just kind of, I don't know, it seems cheap. But in the right circumstances, like this one, I think it's a little less cheap. So look at this. This is a limited edition watch. There's only, I think, 300 made, JDM. It's a very simple quartz watch. I think this case might be used elsewhere. It's not particularly fancy. Look, that's folded end link, folded link here. As you see, I haven't sized it yet. I only just got it. The links themselves, they look solid, but they're folded over. You see that kind of crease line. But, it's hard to position this light to get good illumination and not that ring reflection. Get out of here. But it's just a time-only watch, but they replaced the hour hand with the orange, or the Fréchillon. Okay, you hear Casio in the background. It's going to be beeping for the next 20 seconds. That's just the way it is here. I think they got the dial just right. They got the big triangle at 12 just right. It is not a GMT watch, but it's a lot of fun. It's small, but I've been wearing more smaller watches, as you saw with that Smith's. I think I'm going to make another video at some point of this Smith's watch, which is also a Rolex homage, also adheres to the criteria I mentioned. But this is just cool. It's not supposed to be anything too serious. It wasn't super expensive, but given that it's limited edition, I did pay a premium. This is a really cool dome here. But that's a Seiko homage of a Rolex. That's not... Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there are tons of that. There we go. That is a cool watch. 100 bar, non-GMT, quartz, time-only take on a Rolex. Made by Seiko, of all people. I think that's it. I think I've talked enough about that original Rolex. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully I explained everything that you need to know about these two guys here. I don't think did I show a shot of the back of that? Yeah, that's the logo of... That's the upside down logo of Nano Universe. This is number 268 of 300. Really cool. They're hard to find, but you can find them on eBay. There you go. Two awesome reinterpretations of a 1970s Rolex, my favorite Rolex. This one, a modern, weird, strange interpretation of it, and this one, pretty much as faithful as you can get. All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much. See you next time.